Hey guys, so in my last video, I promised you I'd make this video about the big players in the CRT game, because that's really what it is. However, it being 4th of July week and just a lot of thoughts about patriotism, a lot of things have come into my head. I've seen some comments from Congress people about the flag, and I really wanted to address that from the perspective, because I'm kind of offended that Black Lives Matter that takes on the mantle for all Black people. So I kind of wanted to do an open letter addressing what they have said, and I also want to do an open letter addressing the oppressors who I feel have made them that way. So let me just read you some of what they said in a post in for my local BLM chapter. When we Black Americans see the flag, we know the person flying it is not safe to be around. When we see the flag, we know the person flying it is a racist. When we see this flag, we know that the person flying it lives in a different America than we do. When we see this flag, we question your intelligence. We know to avoid you. It's a symbol of hatred. And there's another comment where they talk about how dangerous the flag is and how harmful it is, because they saw that same flag coming through on the ships when they stole the slaves from Africa. Now here's the thing. If you think about that, if you think about when the flag that we currently have was created, it was well after slavery. That's just part one. And obviously you can guess that there was a lot of animosity against that, a lot of frustration. You know, a lot of the people who have been out there fighting for Black Lives Matter for the last year and a half are also people who have been fighting because they think what they're fighting for is unity. They think that they're fighting to make a better America that all people can be a part of, that all people can grow and progress together. And that's what people who are being allies, well, that's what some of the people who are being allies are being misled to believe that they're doing. And I feel so bad for those people. If that's you, I feel so bad for you, because I understand that you are a kind and compassionate person who wants to do the right thing and who feels a need to heal other people. But that is not what this is about. So after the comments, they responded with this. To all the racists flooding the page, please do not misunderstand us. We do not want you to stop flying your American flags, just like your white supremacist friends who each had their hands in this week as they marched on Philly and were taken out and run out of town. Please keep flying them. It helps us to determine who was racist and who is not. And then, of course, it's the dumb laughing, constant mockery. I don't really care about the mockery so much as I care about it shows how many stupid people there are out in the world. When we bring our arguments to the table, we let the good arguments rise to the top. And then we have a chance to really kind of discuss and to listen to one another and possibly come out better for it on both sides. So that's one of the things that bothers me. The other things that bother me are constantly blaming other people for your problems. America is this idea of individuality, and yet we have these people who are constantly telling us you are not an individual. If you listen to what they say, we Black people. But there's so many Black people, or those in the category of considered Black, that don't agree with this idea that we are a collective we, and we actually own our individualism. We own our responsibility. One of the things I was listening to and preparing for more videos was a training that was done for teachers. And in this training, they said, every single person, especially Black and brown, and they want to tell this to kids, especially Black and brown children, have a little white person inside of them telling them that this is the right thing and this is the wrong thing, and that they need to just kick that white person out. Well, to me, that white person isn't a white person. To me, that's our conscience. That's our spirit. That's us knowing right from wrong. And how do we determine right from wrong? That is different for every single person. And when they tell us that, oh, well, you've been brainwashed to accept whiteness, but then they want to brainwash us to accept nihilism, which I'll put the definition of nihilism up on the board here, but they want to brainwash us to accept something completely different and something that doesn't feel right, then there's a problem. So when they want to tell you that you need to get rid of a part of yourself to be more like them, that is a horrific problem to me. When these people consider us all Black people, that we all think the same, it's extremely insulting. And why that's extremely insulting is because it is bowing down to white supremacy. It is also bowing down to destroying our country from within. And that might sound hyperbolic, but in terms of what the NEA recently spoke about, they spoke about destroying capitalism, destroying ableism, of course, destroying white supremacy. And usually, most of these companies that say these things will also say, we don't recognize reverse racism. In other words, you can spew all of your hate for a year and a half or even longer, and it's totally acceptable because poor you, you've been oppressed. But when you think of yourself as oppressed, you are the one who is stopping yourself from being able to move forward. And I know that can make people so angry. And the reason I think that that makes you so angry is because you've spent years being told by people like Don Lemon, like Joy Reid, by your teachers, by school administrators, by your government, by your pastors, that you are oppressed, that you can't do anything for yourself. And so you should hold on to that anger because that anger makes you righteous. But the reality is it doesn't. What makes us righteous, what makes us good, are the choices that we make individually to put one foot in front of the other and move on. You know, we hear all of these constant things about slavery and how horrible it was and how we couldn't possibly become anything more because our ancestors were slaves. But then you look at the stories of our ancestors, if you can find them, because white schools in their true systemic oppression do not allow stories of victory for Black people. Why do we only hear the stories of Martin Luther King? Why do we only hear stories of suffrage over and over and over again? Every year, it's the same exact stories. Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King, always. We do not hear stories of the people who have went before us and turned nothing into something, of people who built back when their businesses were destroyed, of places like Buxton, Canada, where Black people are thriving and have been thriving for generations, and that's where the runaway slaves ended up. We don't hear those stories. Why? Why do white teachers or Black teachers or just our schools, why do they need to constantly tell us the very worst things about our culture? Because it keeps us down. Because it makes us feel somewhere in the back of our head that we couldn't possibly do anything. I mean, we were just born oppressed. People don't like us, and life is going to be harder for us. It's just not true. But if you walk into a room with this, the world hates me, so I hate the world attitude, you're screwed. I can't get a job because it's just harder for Black people. No, but it might be harder because of your own personal attitude. If you walk into a place because you want to get a job and you present your best self, you are likely to get that job without thought in whether or not of the color, of a prescribed color. That has been the truth for at least 20 years. This idea that hard work is whiteness, this idea that being professional is whiteness, this idea that being on time is whiteness. Why are people telling us these things? In places where Europe hadn't invaded, they still had rules and laws that they followed. And those who followed their laws, like say in Africa, say in Asia, those who followed the laws tended to do better. Every place has laws. Every place requires a moral character. For America not to require a moral character seems like people just want to see the demise of America. And one of the issues that I have are the people flat out lying to us. The Congress people like Maxine Waters, who have been in office since before I was born, standing there and talking about how oppressed we are while she lives in a mansion and her community that she's in charge of suffers greatly with no improvement. You want to know how we improve? How do we improve as African Americans? How do we improve as poor people in situations of true oppression survive? How do we improve our lives? We improve by finding people who are already succeeding. The people that you surround yourself with are the people that you're going to become. We improve ourselves by mentoring programs. Why in the world do we not have plenty of mentoring programs? Why do we not have tech industry? Why do we not have tech training trade schools in the inner cities? They just put on a little tag that says, "Ooh, we support Black lives," put on a little fist and say that, but nothing changes. Now, I get that I've probably ticked off a bunch of you by saying that supporting BLM is not the right thing. And that is because I do not support in any way, shape, or form that organization that has used people. I almost said our people, but I feel like all people are my people. So that organization that has used people, that organization that has lied to African Americans, and that organization that pushes and pushes and pushes most of them down. They have to make everybody look like a victim in order for them to load up their coffers. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with people race using the color of our skin to profit, and in the same time telling all of these things that aren't true about our people, all of these things that aren't true, that no healthy person should believe about themselves just to make a dollar. And that is where I believe that this comes from. The people who are in this, do you know they make about $20,000 a Zoom call? Do you know that Patrice Cullors of BLM has 7 houses? Henry Rogers, otherwise known as Ibram X. Kendi, has created a conglomerate of wealth. He is the poster child for all, especially anti-racist, which is truly neo-racism. And his mother and father were greatly involved in the Black Power theology movement. Now, if you are a Black Christian and you believe in the Black Power theology movement, then I have to wonder where your belief in the Christ Power theology movement, because Christ made it very clear that there is no division in that faith. It is all about, we are all worthy of sin and we all deserve to die. So this idea that Black is righteous and that whiteness is the original sin is a disgusting and heartbreaking way to look at the world around you. I mean, I have to wonder how many people of all different colors, specifically minorities, have missed out on having really wonderful relationships with people because they don't like somebody who looks different than them. And I know that's not everyone, because I'm not that way, but I know that there are a lot of people who are just like white boy, Asian, Mexican. How sad to just label someone that way. And maybe that's why you're okay with being labeled yourself. Or maybe it's, like which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Maybe you label other people because you've been labeled so much yourself. But who's labeled you? Let's look at this. Let's look at the conservative viewpoint. The conservative viewpoint, to be a conservative, is to believe in working and providing for yourself. That's why when elections happen and they don't go the way that people want, there isn't rioting and looting and screaming in the streets. There is a dead silence and a get back to work attitude, because that's what conservatives prioritize. It just is. And if people want to say all of these other things, they're lying to you. Are you really not smart enough to get your own ID? Are you really not? They say you can't get your own ID, and that's voter suppression. But yet at the same time, you have to have a driver's license from anything from getting food stamps to getting on an airplane. So why is it that this is voter suppression? And why are we okay with administrations getting up in front of televisions and saying it's hard for Black people to manage that? Are we infants? Are we incapable of doing for ourselves? Do you believe that? Do you believe that you have no free will? These to me are the most heartbreaking thoughts that African Americans often tell me. And this is why I dig my feet in and say, get off the Democratic plantation. Because they're the ones who've been telling you this. From television to teachers to governors. Those who say, we can help you. I remember that kind of help. When I was a kid in the foster system, I remember what that kind of help looked like. It looked like walking into a room and seeing that everybody had these nice things and I had to pick out of the poor box. That kind of help is limiting. And that's the whole thing about America. That's the whole wonderful and beautiful thing about America, is the only thing that limits us is ourselves. And people know that, which is why they've been brainwashing African Americans for 400 years. 400 years. They've been brainwashing them and saying, let us help you. Let us help you, because you couldn't possibly do it for yourself. And what has that done? That's limited our people. I just saw a list of who makes the most money in America. And believe it or not, it's not white people. I'll post the list, but white people are among the second to the bottom. And of course, African Americans are the bottom. Does that mean every African American is poor? No, because we've got Ibram X. Kendi and Oprah Winfrey and countless doctors and lawyers and professionals of all different kinds, construction workers, everybody who puts themselves to the test does. But it is only the African Americans who are constantly told they need to be helped by the Democratic Party. And that, to me, is true systemic racism. That they have taught you for decades to hate and to wallow. Because when you're busy wallowing, when you're busy going, I couldn't possibly do anything for myself, you can't do anything for yourself. Because you can't put the steps into motion to get out of that place. And so you live your life in this horrible bottle of rage that you don't have to. You know, that flag, regardless of America's history, and I know so many of the atrocities, and I've lived many of those atrocities, but that flag stands for a more perfect union, not a perfect union. The ideas that are in the Constitution, that all men might be equal. Yes, originally that was written for white men, but it was written in such a way that it could continuously change, that it could continuously grow, that we could have movements like the civil rights, that we could question government, that we could do the things that we needed to do to get to the point where we could have a Black president. But yet we still sit and we still wallow and we still listen to all of the things that say hate, 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 give us a paycheck and hate, hate, hate. That doesn't have to be our stories. The idea that needs to be our story, that we only have one story, is the crippling and truly white supremacist act. And there are Black people who are white supremacists. Karl Marx says, accuse people of what you are doing while you are doing it to cause confusion. The true white supremacists, those pushing state-sanctioned racism, those saying that instead of Martin Luther King's I have a dream that one day my children will be seen not by the color of their skin but by the content of their character, is getting pushed away by the people who say they're trying to help us. It's getting pushed away by, oh, wouldn't you feel more comfortable in an affinity group where you could be with more people like you? What are more people like me? More people like me are people with thick hair and who wear head wrap. More people like me are people who think and share the same beliefs and the same values. That's what I consider more people like me. I want desperately for African Americans to realize that they have power within themselves, and the power doesn't have to be resentment. I want desperately for African Americans to look into true history and to realize that those people who have always said that they are for African Americans tend to always use African Americans. I want desperately for people to look within themselves and not find the little white man, but instead find that part of spirit that says, I can do and be anything that I set my mind to. I can put blinders on, I can set goals, I can make it happen because I live in a place where I'm not condemned to a caste system, where I'm not condemned to a class system. I can move out of that because we have freedom and because we have liberty. Those are the things we should be grateful for. And for those people that, if they were somewhere else, if they were under Sharia law, if they were even in the UK, they would not have the freedom of speech to do the things that they are doing in America. So seriously, it's time to just move on. It's time to say, life is what I make of it. And because I live in this country, I have an opportunity to make it whatever it is that I want to make it. I'm so tired of the constant complaining and the constant weakness of people that they think is glorification. They think that being a victim is righteousness, and it's just not. Righteousness is contributing to society. Righteousness is making things better for other people. And no matter how much you complain, that is not improving our world. So guys, I just want you to think about the fact that we live in a country that affords every single one of us freedoms. I want you to read about true history. And I'm not talking about a revisionist history that is the 1619 Project. I'm talking about read these stories and realize something that I learned yesterday, or that I heard yesterday. You know, the men who signed the Declaration of Independence, none of them were perfect. They all had major flaws because every single individual has major flaws. But ultimately, the decisions that they made, the things that they did to benefit our country cannot just be summed up into black or white issues. There's so much nuance inside of that. And the fact is that they did their very best. And they gave us the opportunities that we have today, opportunities that other people, opportunities that immigrants come here in boats and create rafts and risk their lives and are abused and are oftentimes turned around and sent back. But they will give it all up to come to this country that some of you can't stop complaining